Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Shang. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. On Wednesday, May 18th, President Xi Jinping spoke by video about economic challenges that the world faces as a result of the pandemic. Xi did not mention any of China's own economic downturn. A day later, in an in-person meeting, Premier Li Keqiang struck a more candid and conciliatory tone. His remarks focused largely on China's own issues. Speaking to a group of senior representatives for American, European, and Asian multinationals operating in China, Mr. Li said China is committed to striking a balance between reviving the economy and containing repeated COVID-19 outbreaks. Of particular note, Mr. Li did not defend Mr. Xi's zero-COVID strategy. It was a departure from recent meetings that foreign executives have had with senior Chinese officials, including some involved in trade and commerce. In the meeting, some foreign executives recommended that China vaccinate more of its population, especially the elderly. According to participants, Mr. Li said, "I hear your message about vaccines and we will expand vaccination coverage. We can't have companies stopping their operations." China's zero-COVID policy has resulted in a combination of lockdowns, mass testing, and quarantines. That has crushed business activity and made it harder to vaccinate the public, especially China's large elderly population. During much of the two-month-long lockdown of Shanghai, an economic hub of more than 25 million people, most vaccination centers and programs were suspended. As of mid-March, just 51% of Chinese people over 80 had received 2 COVID-19 vaccine doses, compared with roughly 88% for the overall population. While Mr. Xi has talked about the need to enhance global cooperation on vaccine development, he hadn't publicly emphasized the importance of vaccinating China's population. Mr. Li's remarks don't openly challenge Mr. Xi's approach to the pandemic, but the comments exposed the simmering tensions among top Communist Party officials over Mr. Xi's commitment to his zero-COVID strategy. One of the participants in the May 19th meeting with the Premier said, "Li clearly wants a different focus." Mr. Li had long been sidelined in the past decade. It is not clear whether his political leverage could push for any meaningful changes in China's COVID strategy, but he is enjoying a late renaissance inside the Chinese Communist Party. President Xi Jinping seems mindful of the cost of China's COVID lockdowns earlier this year and sought to give Shanghai some leeway to tackle local outbreaks without shutting down the entire city. But he reaffirmed the zero-tolerance policy at a leadership meeting in early May as the Omicron variant spread across the country. After nearly a month of Shanghai's lockdown, the head of China's National Health Commission credited Mr. Xi with having personally commended China's COVID-19 plan. The zero-COVID approach proved effective at both containing outbreaks and getting the economy humming again earlier in the pandemic. It resulted that Mr. Xi has been touting that China has managed the virus better than the West. Changing policy would be politically untenable for the top leader, especially now, especially this year when Xi is seeking a tradition-breaking third term in power. The 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party will be held in Beijing in the second half of 2022. A new slate of leadership will be unveiled and the competition over the future direction of China's COVID response has intensified. In his video meeting with the foreign executives, Mr. Xi gave no indication of changing the current zero-COVID policy, and the executives weren't invited to ask him questions. In the meeting, Mr. Xi said, "The pandemic that has been going on unabated is posing a serious threat to the life and health of the people and taking a heavy toll on the world economy." Some participants said Xi's comments seemed detached from the fact that many Western economies have bounced back from the pandemic relatively well, and that China's economy is now facing some of the greatest pressure. Since the outbreak of Omicron in Shanghai and other parts of China this year, China's economy has slowed dramatically, causing widespread public frustration and prompting some foreign companies to reconsider their investments in China. Apple Corporation, for example, has told outside contractors it wants to boost production outside China, citing Beijing's COVID approach as one reason. Industry groups representing Western firms in China have stepped up their calls for Beijing to change its pandemic policies, saying long-standing curbs on travel and other restrictions are hurting profits, thwarting investment, and causing an exodus of foreign executives. According to a survey released by the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China in early May, as many as 23% of European businesses are considering moving their operations out of China, the highest proportion in a decade. The chamber has urged authorities to shift their COVID control strategy from lockdowns to vaccination. The world is not waiting for China, they said. Meanwhile, a survey published by the American Chamber of Commerce in China in May showed that more than 50% of American businesses have either delayed or decreased their investments in China due to recent outbreaks and repeated lockdowns. U.S. investment in China had already plateaued in the past decade, averaging between $13 billion and $16 billion a year. Premier Li Keqiang's term nears its end. However, in recent months, he has been trying to exert greater control over the management of China's economy. He has helped dial back some of Mr. Xi's measures that steered China away from Western-style capitalism and contributed to the slowdown. Mr. Li has also been trying to influence the decision on who his successor will be. The May 19th meeting with the foreign executives lasted 1.5 hours. Mr. Li didn't mention Mr. Xi's zero COVID policy once. As soon as he walked into the meeting room at the Diaoyutai, he took off his mask. And after he ended the meeting and talked to participants on his way out, his staff reminded him to put the mask back on. Some participants in the meeting said Mr. Li's disregard of Beijing's strict mask-wearing protocols was noteworthy. With the 20th National Congress of CCP approaching, the power struggle will only intensify. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.